a mountain in Thessaly, the easternmost area of Thessaly. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So you can see here a small map. All this region of Thessaly until the tip of this peninsula. There is a big Pelion occupies basically a peninsula, the easternmost peninsula of Thessaly. So all these regions here, because they are protected from the northern winds flowing this way by the tip of the mountain, they are very good for olive oil, for olive cultivation. And particularly during the Ottoman period, this region flourished also because you would have these small ports all over the coastline where people could send the olives and olive oil to be loaded on small boats and ships, and to be sent in other areas of mainland Greece. So olive oil production is somewhat traditional to these regions. And just a moment. The museum itself on the theme of olive, and as well as the byproducts of olive, like oil, the rural life, and folklore. It is situated on the ground floor of a traditional stone building at Anogadzea station. This was also in order to facilitate the commerce at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. A small railway was built all along these villages of Pelion. So the particular building was built in 1924 by Ioannis Vogiadzis. And the first floor was occupied by the family, basically. So the ground floor is called the cellar and was used for several agricultural activities, particularly centered on the olive groves. The building was restored in 2007, and it was converted into a museum run by a local NGO, Pelion Oros, as a non-profit association enterprise. Here you can see the building, okay? The ground floor is here, and this is the first floor. Some pictures of the family which inhabited the place, and also some pictures of activities related to the olive oil. And here it is functioning as a museum, basically, with all the old infrastructure and machinery used throughout time. The Olive and Olive Oil Museum houses a collection of restored artifacts which were found in the building, where olives were sorted and processed. And these are all kept inside the building, but also some of them outside on the little ground surrounding. You can see amphoras of various sizes for storing oil, also metal hoops for strengthening the barrels, wooden stoves which actually made up the vast storage barrels, and an impressive olive barrel of 2.5 almost meters in diameter. Inside the building, you can see two levels nowadays: the main museum, where the oil storage depot is situated with 4 built-in amphoras, and an audiovisual facility as well. And the main hall, which contains information about how olives were gathered, processed, and prepared for the market. Like that, one can go through the entire process of olive cultivation, from plowing the ground, taking care of the trees by pruning and spraying and harvesting, collecting the fruit with the use of long sticks or rods, and also gathering the olives from the ground. Nowadays they use huge pieces of fabric I suppose in the past as well, they would use something like nets or something. And then the long way of processing olives, if they are sold as olives and not as oil, they need to be stored in big jars with water for a few days, and then salt and citric acid is added in order to preserve them. So it is a rather long process and interesting process. Finally, one sees how the oil was produced from the olives, and also what byproducts you would get in those days, particularly soap, and how traditionally soap was made. What is interesting about the museum is its collection of agricultural implements for cultivating the olives, mattocks, saws, pruning tools, a yoke for draught animals, etc., as well as the equipment for making the huge storage barrels and the tools for collecting and storing the crop, and also for measuring the crop, weighing. Also, there are some other artifacts from rural life of former times, like different kinds of weighing machines, bread making equipment from the wood-fired bakery that used to be situated just next to the main museum, and also a small collection of domestic appliances and utensils. Now, what the people have done, the NGO has done for maintaining the museum, it has gone to organize several museum-based educational programs for pupils for all stages of education. And it aims at bringing children in close contact with Greek agricultural and traditional culture. It also prepares teaching material for the teachers, and storytelling or a game for the children. So far, over 6,000 students have participated in these projects. Of course, everything is postponed, unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, but hopefully it will resume pretty soon. And a few words about the association which runs it. It was founded in 2006, and it is a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization. Its aims, the aims of the Pelion Oros NGO, are mainly developmental, cultural, educational, environmental, and athletic. And these aims are achieved, of course, through the means described in the statutory founding act of the organization. But the interesting thing is that in this NGO, there is a diverse collaboration with people of different backgrounds. And each time, depending on the subject to be implemented, the activity to be implemented, the most relevant people are called in to organize and host the event. It even has a certification by the Hellenic Organization for Standardization, and ISO, as we say. Among the activities so far organized was the achievement of a Leader Plus funding, which enabled the museum to open up in March 2008. The good thing is that people there record the amount of visitors, so we have some statistical data. So from 2008 until today, we have about 10,800 people, so roughly 1,000 visitors a year. Thank you very much for this presentation. Mr. Moraros, unfortunately, is not here, but we hope to have him with us in other events as well as in the new project Integrural that we're going to start, because Thessaly, Fakadona, and Pelion are all in the same larger administrative unit. Thank you. So now if there is no, I mean, unfortunately, I cannot answer many questions, but I suggest that we move on to our last presentation, which is closely related to the role of stakeholders, and then keep our discussion for the end. So, Despina? Despina? Yes, here she is.
It's me again, I guess. So let me share my screen and I'll try to keep this one shorter because I think that at this point, sorry, I think that at this point we have discussed more or less the things that were part of this presentation. Well, this one is about the role and the importance of stakeholders in the management of heritage assets. And I think that we have already discussed yesterday and today about why heritage can still be a factor for someone who is not necessarily an entrepreneur in the cultural or heritage sector, because cultural heritage is something that involves us all, and especially on the level of local cultural heritage. We are all stakeholders as members of our local communities. So the stakeholders is not a technical term. It just describes all people or groups or organizations who have a legitimate interest regarding a specific heritage asset or cultural project. And therefore, we must keep in mind that cultural heritage and heritage assets have multiple stakeholders, and their opinions matter, all their opinions matter, and they should be taken into consideration. And in fact, stakeholder consideration is recognized as an important part of the sustainable management of cultural assets. I think Maria already made that clear in her own presentation. Let's see briefly key stakeholder groups regarding cultural assets. We have the managing authorities, including public bodies, the tourist sector, and local community, of course, including local residents and, of course, local entrepreneurs. And this specific shape does lean towards archaeological sites, and that's why there is this reference to site managers. But in fact, the same is true about intangible heritage assets, such as long-established producing techniques for specifically local producers or culinary traditions. And all these aspects of local traditions are also part of our local heritage. And intangible heritage, even if we don't always recognize it as such. And with intangible heritage, managing authorities have a lesser role to play as a general rule, while for local communities, it is a living experience. And at the same time, of course, it is something that can potentially be employed to give a distinctive character to our businesses, to our to the products of our businesses, to our projects. We all heard the presentation from Kalamata and how they made the living experience of that place the central part of this specific project. Here you see a visualization of the top-down approach to cultural management. And this is what happens when you have an omnipotent managing authority, usually representative of the public authorities, which calls all the important shots. And the role of other stakeholders is downplayed and restricted. And in such cases, we as local stakeholders can become just part of the audience, like visitors to our own heritage. So this is an approach that generally causes discontent because stakeholders feel that their needs and inputs are disregarded. And at the same time, I mean, maybe even worse is that in such themes, such ways of managing cultural heritage can create a sense of alienation from our own heritage, even at a local level. For example, with intangible heritage, especially with its local traditional aspects, as we already said, an overbearing public managing authority usually doesn't have a lot to do. But if we are accustomed to these top-down approaches only, we tend to get discouraged as members of our local communities from taking ownership of our heritage and really factor it into our entrepreneurial projects and endeavors. A different approach is collective heritage management, which seems in which various categories of stakeholders are represented and collaborate in the decision-making processes. So why does stakeholder consideration and engagement matter? Ultimately, it is a question of sustainability. Strong stakeholders endorsement and active engagement provides a strong network of support for any project at any scale. And this is an important lesson because we have mentioned that we are all stakeholders in our cultural heritage, but at the same time, we have to consider that for our own projects or small business plans, these also are something that involves other stakeholders on a smaller level, and not just the final recipients of our services, our customers, but also the people who could constitute the network of support that could effectively support and promote our own projects. And we can, well, in order to make this work, we can divide this process into different steps and start with stakeholders assessment and analysis, and which means that we have to just try and identify who are the possible stakeholders and at what level of our project, and how we can think in terms of which groups of stakeholders can actually be promoters of our project, who are going to be the final recipients of our service, and how to keep them informed and content, who are going to be against our project and how we can come to terms with them, stuff like that. And the second step is to set communication plans, start communicate at different levels, and see what sort of actual problems can occur during implementation of projects and resolve them step by step. See if we need to reassess our approaches, our communication plans. I don't want to keep this too technical, but thankfully we heard the presentation from Kalamata, which had this this aspect of how they went about with actually making groups of their stakeholders, so that they could make them feel part of specific teams with the small badges. And it was a very nice question, which provoked them to talk more about that, because this is, when we talk about accessing stakeholders, it's not something very, very technical and theoretical. It's about these sort of strategies which you can put in place in order to approach people, in order to make them part of your planning, or part of your team even. And to keep things grounded, I'm going to briefly discuss a couple of case studies, two of them, and they are both success stories. The first one is about the International Music Festival of Moulivos, which is also a surprising story because this one is a festival of classical music, actually. It is an international festival held at the historic town and touristic center of Moulivos in Lesbos, and it was launched in 2015. And if you have followed the situation in Greece, 2015 was a very, very difficult time to start, especially summer of 2015, to start something, to launch a cultural event in any place in Greece because of the very difficult economic situation. We had capital controls in place, and these actually caused problems with solvency for Greek enterprises. And Lesbos was at the time at the epicenter of the refugee crisis, especially that summer. But they did launch their festival in August 2015, and it was a success. And actually, they keep repeating it, and they managed to have their sixth installment last August 2020. And upon discussion with the organizers, we learned that they had started preparing the local community and local agents 3 years prior to the launching of their festival, which was a very good move because well, locals in the beginning, they didn't even believe that visitors would come for such an event. And as the situation kept becoming more and more difficult, they were even more skeptical. But the organizers worked with the local community. They put a plan in place for when the festival would actually be carried out, so that they ensured that they would have a rotation plan, so that local business owners would see the visitors in their businesses. They would see what sort of income visitors would result from this festival. And they managed to keep this working during the first festival. So, for example, they kept they kept the rotation plan for restaurants, and invited musicians went around all these restaurants, and restaurant owners were satisfied by that. But also they worked systematically with stakeholders on the outside communities. They had a good dissemination plan in place. They used their established links with clubs and groups abroad, and they ensured that people would hear about that, and visitors would come in for this sort of festival. And the second experience is a time heritage one again. It's about the Mukaku project, which was aimed at the formation of a portable unit for conservation and documentation of portable heritage assets in remote areas of Greece. And we worked a lot with icons and other religious artifacts. So in this case, we didn't have the chance to work 3 years ahead with specific local communities, but it still proved to be a process. And initially, the people in the communities we approached were apprehensive. They were afraid of letting us work with their religious artifacts, because to them it wasn't an archaeological thing. It was about things relating to their cultic life. And we had to communicate openly at all levels of local communities. We were very open, and we tried to explain what sort of technologies we brought in. And also, we had to take into consideration a different set of stakeholders, which were the local FORAs. And this was important because in Greece, the local FORAs have the right to have a say about anything that any work that is carried out with archaeological assets. So we had to explain not only what we were going to do with these artifacts, but also we had to come to terms with them in what regards the publication of the procedures. And eventually we had to agree that we wouldn't publish online our digital database, so that the licensing would remain at their power, which under Greek law is something that you cannot easily bypass. And so we did that. But long story short, eventually we managed to come to terms with different sets of stakeholders, and soon the locals were wholeheartedly supporting the project. So I think that now that we have heard some presentations, and I mean, even some presentations from case studies, and we have discussed all this, maybe it's better to just start the discussion. And what we hope that you take from this presentation is just a couple of questions about questions to consider, not necessarily to answer, but yeah, how you see yourself, as how you see that you fit into this stakeholders grid regarding your own community, and who would you consider other stakeholders to be for your projects and endeavors, and how you think that you could mobilize them. And I think that maybe now it's time to discuss more and present less. I don't know how you feel about that. No, maybe I should leave this last.
Thank you, Despina. Thank you very much. So the floor is open to everybody.
I have a question, may I?
Yes, yes.
At the festival, the music festival, musicians went to the restaurants, so people could, it's a small public, isn't it, for the concerts?
I'm sorry?
It's a small public.
Yeah, but the public was not only the locals, also visitors came around.
Okay,
but the organizers
became international. That's the big success, was that it became an international event. So
okay, but
people flying in.
The concerts were only in the restaurants?
Oh, no. The invited musicians.
Okay.
The organizers were ensuring that the invited musicians would go around all the restaurants that they had in their planning.
And people pay the meal, and the concert, or only the meal, and it was included in the festival. They were for free in the restaurants.
No, they paid normally, I think.
Normally,
yeah.
Only the meal.
Or the organizers paid for the musicians, and the public just paid for their own meals.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's like most of festival organizers in other parts too. They ensure a budget for their invited artists, and so they cover their expenses. But when they do so, they pay for their meals at local restaurants and businesses. And when, of course, the bigger festival becomes, the bigger the chances for business owners and restaurants to be able to give some offers. And for example, in Pyrgos, where the annual Children's film festival of Olympia takes place, now they're running for 20 years, 21 years, I don't remember, maybe 22. So in the beginning, it was a very difficult thing to organize there because they only had like 2 cinemas in the city altogether, and it was an area without much cinematic experience. But now it is a big festival for the whole city, and of course, businesses do not need to be attracted. Now they have embraced the whole thing, and they give much more, and it has blown up. It's a very big children's festival for the European standards. So it's something that in the beginning it's more difficult, but it's something that if it goes well, it can go far.
Somebody else? No, it is true that since the late 90s, all these, there are several examples like that throughout Greece of festivals and special meetings and occasions organized in little places. And of course, the facility of traveling with charter flights, etc., has enabled to a large extent the success of these stories. But also the fact that people realize that in order to make a success story, you need to plan it as international as possible or as open as possible. If you just plan it for the local community, unfortunately, sometimes this does not work. But if you bring people from other areas, then the locals reappreciate their own premises. They reappreciate what they have to offer. And this is a big boost to local community. Okay, any other views, any other ideas you might want to share, similar cases in your places?
We have been here for 2 hours
Okay.
and 20 minutes. I think we are a little bit tired also.
Okay.
Probably
Okay, no, so it's a
think-
Saturday, so I know people want to run
Yes.
errands and spend time with families. So thank you very much for
Thank
being present at our coaching event. And needless to say, we are always open for individual discussions and for good ideas. I took very seriously yesterday the issue about the pietra dura, about the traditional building techniques. And I promise that we will try to find some kind of project, a joint project between our countries to try and protect this very important part of architectural heritage of the Mediterranean. And of course, any other ideas are welcome. Thank you very much.
I'm
Yes?
sorry to interrupt what Aphrodite has said. I have to remember that we will have at the end of February the next webinar with our French colleague. So be way to find some interesting, I think, topics for the next webinar.
we will announce with some anticipaton more than before, hopefully, the dates for the seminar and the contents. You will have it with more anticipation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thank you very much for all the presentations. I think it was very nice, and I have to go to Greece now.
Yes, yes, we're all welcome. we wait for you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Πολύ καλά, ευχαριστώ. Ευχαριστώ.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
thank you. Thank you very much.
No encuentro mi botón. Aquí. See you.